In the heart of Kyoto, not far from the Kamo River and the busy shops and supermarkets and the quiet side streets and the main thoroughfares, is a world hidden behind huge walls. It is a world unto itself. The Kyoto Imperial Palace. We are here on one of the final days of winter. Although spring is right around the corner, it is still pretty cold out. These days, there are a few more visitors to the ground than is usual, as the plum blossoms are now in bloom. The plum tree, or ume in Japanese, has played an important role in Japanese culture for many centuries. Typically flowering in February and March, the event is celebrated with festivals in temples, shrines, and public parks all across Japan. It is bitterly cold through the winter here in Kyoto, and the ume blossoms appearing gives us assurance that warmer days are ahead. You can see the locals here coming to rejoice under these trees. Some have been walking this path for decades. For others, it might be the very first time. I personally enjoy to see the ume blossoms, not quite when they are in full bloom, but just as they are emerging, as we see here. It is in these moments we can observe the changing of the seasons, how everything is always in a state of change, even ourselves. We come upon a small shrine known as Shirakumo Jinja. This shrine venerates Benten, also known as Benzaiten, who is one of the 7 gods of good fortune. Visitors to this shrine often pray here to obtain wisdom and superior creative abilities, especially in music. The landscape here seems infinite, and the trees enormous. You can't help to notice this at every turn. It is now time to enter the secured walls to the inner grounds of the Imperial Palace. In the year 794, Kyoto was established as the imperial capital of Japan. For the next 1075 years, the emperor resided on these grounds. There are 6 gates to the imperial palace. Here we see the Gishu-mon gate, which was used by ministers, siblings of the emperor, princes and princesses, and court nobles. Notice the chrysanthemum, the personal emblem of the emperor, adorning the roofs of many of the structures here. Under these majestic pine trees, you can see the long earthen walls enclosing the palace, known as tsuji. Placed on a stone base, these walls present a distinctive dignity. The 5 white horizontal stripes has been adopted since the Edo period and signifies that these are imperial grounds. Shodai-bu-no-ma was a waiting hall for official visitors. Visitors to the imperial palace were to wait in their respective rooms according to their rank. These 3 rooms were often referred to by the subjects of their sliding doors. The room of the cherry trees, the room of the cranes, and the room of the tigers. The Shin Mikuruma-yose was a porch created in 1914 for the new emperor and was used specifically for him to get in and out of cars. The emperor would typically travel by carriage until this point. While another porch is used for court nobles and visitors, this porch is for the emperor's use only. We are now approaching a courtyard known as the Dantei. The Dantei was used by the emperor for state and religious purposes. Enthronement ceremonies for incoming emperors were held here. The Shinshin-den is the main structure at the palace. It is where important state ceremonies and rituals used to take place. Renovated in 1855, the building displays high wooden floors and a thatched roof made of multiple layers of cypress bark. This is known as the Shin-den style of architecture. The ground in this courtyard is covered in a white sand, symbolic of the pure nature of these grounds. We can see here in the Dantei 2 trees planted in front of the Shinshin-den. A mandarin tree, which represents prosperity and longevity, and the cherry tree, which represents the ephemeral nature of life. The mandarin tree doesn't particularly like cold weather, so you can see a temporary shelter is built around it during winter. The interior space is warmed with heaters. We are now approaching the first of the 2 major gardens at the palace. The Oike-niwa is a graceful strolling garden centered around a pond reminiscent of the Shin-den garden style of the Heian period. As we can see here, the gardens of this era were often meant to evoke famous aquatic scenery from China or Japan. The Shin-den style garden, originally the location of ceremonies, developed into a pleasure garden to be enjoyed on foot, by boat, or viewed from the pavilions. The bank closest to the palace is covered with stones and is known as a suhama. A suhama serves to protect the shore and enhance the view. The stepping stones laid through the suhama lead to a dock. This is where those enjoying this garden would embark on dragon-shaped boats and experience the garden from the water. By viewing the garden from this angle, the pond would look wider and the rocks more magnificent. There are 4 bridges in this garden that visitors would travel across as they circle around the pond. The bridges symbolize the path to paradise and everlasting life. In the center of the pond is an island which represents Mount Horai, a mystical mountain which is the home of the 8 immortals of Taoism. Between the 2 structures that look out to this garden is a small space known as the Kemari-no-niwa. Kemari has been a performing art in Japan for over 1,000 years. A ball covered in deer leather is kicked into the air. The goal is not for it to touch the ground. Kemari is not a battle for victory or defeat. The aim is to give an easy-to-kick ball to the opponent. It is done in the spirit of enjoyment and humor. We will now enter the second and final major garden at the palace. The Gonai-tei, or inner garden, is located next to the room where the emperor would spend much of his time during the summer. It is said that the emperor would spend time in this space while gazing off to the nearby mountains and reminiscing about his younger days. It is an exquisitely designed space which contains a meandering stream and small pond which provide a cool breeze during the hot season. Spanning across the stream are a series of earthen, stone, and wooden bridges. The shape of the stream provides elegance reminiscent of the winding stream party of the Heian period. The winding stream party was a game played by the nobility in which participants would compose poems beside a stream. Lacquer cups of sake would be placed on trays and sent down the stream. Participants would have to complete their poem by the time the cup arrived. When the cup reached the poet, they were expected to drink its contents, either as a celebration for completing the poem on time or as a penalty for not. We can see paintings of this event on the sliding doors of the veranda of the hall that looks out onto this garden. In the north area of the garden is a tea house named Chosetsu, or listening to the snow. Here the emperor would listen to the sound of the snow that piled up without making a noise, a reference to the introspective moments that would take place here during the cold Kyoto winters. As we end our time here at the Imperial Palace from our 1,000-year journey into history, we are immediately brought back into the present with the sight of these 2 plum trees. Just on the brink of blooming, we witness the changing seasons from winter to spring. The white blossoms are a reminder of of the snow that may have recently fallen, while the red blossoms remind us of the coming spring. A verse by the great haiku poet Busan comes to mind. Plum blossoms everywhere. I should go south. I should go north.